Why do we need Buddhism? We have our own Christian culture. This is a question that I often get asked here in Russia. When I tell people I'm a Buddhist teacher, my name is Suvannavira, and I'm a member of the Triratna Buddhist Order. So this is my answer. It's a bit complicated. It has a few parts. The question, why do we need Buddhism? We have our own Christian culture. Is kind of based on the assumption that Buddhism is something cultural. And you can forgive people for thinking that. Thinking about people in Thailand and in Sri Lanka. Thinking of what we know of Tibetan Buddhism. Even of regions in Russia, like Buryatia. But is that what Buddhism really is? Is that what Buddhism is in essence? Is that what Buddhism was at the beginning? What was Buddhism at the beginning? That's a good place to start. You could say it all started when the Buddha gained enlightenment. When the Buddha became a Buddha. Meaning when an ordinary human being became a Buddha. First in our world to gain enlightenment. And no trace of the path to enlightenment existed anywhere. Throws up another question. More questions than answers at the moment. What is enlightenment? That's a good question. And this is a brief reply. Enlightenment is seeing things as they really are. Enlightenment is direct experience of absolute reality. Enlightenment is direct experience of our own true nature. Enlightenment is eradicating all the causes of our suffering. Enlightenment is overwhelming universal love and compassion. But even though we said that, we must remember that enlightenment is beyond the power of words to express. Enlightenment is beyond enlightenment. Enlightenment is beyond any form of culture to express, which is why it's sometimes called the transcendental. Even though calling it the transcendental is at least as limited as calling it enlightenment, at least as limiting. So we've got to enlightenment at least. But the Buddha did find a way to teach others how to gain enlightenment. We may say that Buddhism started when the Buddha first did this. And this is what Buddhism really is. This is what Buddhism is, in essence. This was how Buddhism started. His way of doing this, his path of practice, is called the Dharma. He first communicated the Dharma to a group of 5, then to a group of 60. He spent the rest of his life teaching the Dharma. He taught his last disciple on his deathbed, shortly before entering Parinirvana, the final nirvana, when the enlightened consciousness dissociated from the body in which it was gained. After his parinirvana, in the Sangha, in the spiritual community of his disciples, discussion occurred about the true nature of his teaching. Not surprising, it's a complex subject. Even the word enlightenment is complex. And discussions sometimes turned into disagreements. And the Dharma spread to new countries and cultures. Each time it adapted and developed its presentation while keeping faith to the timeless principles it contained. Perhaps we're getting more a sense of what Buddhism really is. I hope so. If you throw a pebble into a lake with still waters, the ripples would spread out and cover the whole lake and reach all the banks. Likewise, if someone practices the Dharma, the effects will ripple out into wider society. If enough people do this, a Buddhist culture will begin to develop. But after a few hundred years or more, in such a Buddhist culture, someone might consider themselves a Buddhist if they were born into a Buddhist country, in a Buddhist country. They might consider themselves a Buddhist if they worship the Buddha and visit a Buddhist temple on Sundays, although they don't make a serious effort to practice the teachings, all the teachings, moment to moment in everyday life. So returning to our original question, does a Christian culture need such a Buddhist culture? Good question. And what I'd like to say is, any culture needs people on the path to see things as they really are, on the path to have direct experience of reality, absolute reality, and direct experience of our true nature. The two don't contradict. Neither would be true if they did contradict. On the path to eradicate all the sources of our suffering and to experience overwhelming, universal love and compassion. And long may the effects of such people, long may the effects of their actions ripple out into society as a whole, ripple out into the world as a whole.